This is the Blood Red podcast from the Liverpool Echo.
Hello, it's Paul Wheelock and welcome to the Debrief. Thanks for joining us live on the Blood Red channel as we react to Liverpool's 2-0 victory at Sheffield United this evening. Second half goals from Curtis Jones and Roberto Firmino, or maybe it's not, but we'll come to that in a moment, ensured the Reds return to winning ways after the painful Merseyside derby defeat. I've got Matt Alisson alongside me. And Matt, I think it's fair to say that was a deserved victory too.
Yeah, very much so. Liverpool were dominant. We've known for a little while now that they've been able to be dominant without ever getting the ball in the back of the net and without, making stupid mistakes at the back. But thankfully, they have managed to get what they deserve tonight. And it was a victory that I think Liverpool needed. I think it was one that Liverpool expected to get as well. It's one of those that I think you almost can't win in a sense. Anything but a win tonight would have been a huge disappointment. And as it is, they've got the 3 points, and I think they have to move on very quickly. There's big matches to come, obviously, not least the Chelsea game. I'm sure we'll touch on that in a little while. And I think for Liverpool to get into the top four and set themselves up really for what is a huge, huge week, they had to win tonight. And thankfully, as I say, they've managed to do that. Yeah,
let's talk about the first goal scorer, Curtis Jones, because for a while there, it felt like Liverpool were never going to score given the performance of Ramsdale in the Sheffield United goal. But it was Jones who broke the deadlock. It's his fourth goal of the season, and it's actually his 29th appearance of the season. Now, I think if it hadn't been for the horrible injuries Liverpool have suffered this season, I do doubt whether he would have played that many games, certainly at this stage of the campaign. But he's more than held his own, hasn't he, Matt? And surely the lessons of this season will hold him in such good stead for going forward.
Yeah, 100%. We know how talented he is, and we've spoken plenty of times about the ability to be such a controlling midfielder. I think that was what we saw again tonight. It was him who was the furthest of the three in the midfield. Thiago did a sort of more controlling role as he always does, obviously, when Wijnaldum at the base, and it was up to Curtis Jones really to take Liverpool forward, take a few chances, obviously score the goal that he did at a huge moment in the game to put Liverpool ahead. And again, it's just another step forward for him. It's a cool finish. He was the one that was sort of dribbling and taking players on, taking chances, which is what Liverpool sometimes have lacked in the last few weeks. And look, it's no surprise that he's popped up with a decisive moment. We've said it plenty of times, that the goals that Liverpool have conceded, the silly mistakes over the last few weeks have tended to come when he's not been on the pitch. So, yeah, it was no surprise to see him on the pitch today. Again, he's going to learn from this. He's going to learn from all the games. But I think it's more than that. It's more than just putting him in for the experience and taking him to the next level. He's in there because at the moment he's in Liverpool's best team for me. And I think he's shown that again tonight. A really clinical finish, something that, Roberto Firmino probably needed to learn from in that first half. It was, a lesser experienced player stepping up and helping Liverpool tonight. And look, it couldn't have come at a better time for him or for the team. And again, it's going to be the case, I think, over the next few weeks. I think he's going to probably play again against Chelsea. I'd be surprised if he dropped out after that performance tonight. He certainly deserves to have another go. And yeah, what was it, 29 appearances you said so far for him this season? I mean, to end this season realistically with 40 odd appearances, if you'd have said that to Curtis Jones at the start of the season, I think he'd certainly have taken that. And we know the injury situation. We know the reasons why he's been put into the team, but it's the same with any young player. Once you're given that chance, because you're good enough. You then have to go and prove it and step up. And yeah, there's no doubt about it, not just tonight, but throughout the entire season, that's exactly what he's done.
Yeah, perfect role model for Curtis. This is the man who made his goal for him, Trent AlexanderArnold. Obviously, all those years ago now, even though he's still such a young lad himself, he got the chance when Nathaniel Klein got injured. He's never looked back. So hopefully it's going to be the same with Curtis Jones. But I just want to stay on Trent. Liverpool's form, I think it's been fair to say, it's been up and down late. It's been very poor at Anfield, not so much away from home. But across these kind of inconsistent performances, do you think I'm right in saying, Matt, that Trent's currently enjoying his most consistent personal form of the season so far? I thought he was Liverpool's shining light in the derby defeat to Everton. And again, I thought tonight he was very good. The second half, he really took the game once again to Sheffield United.
Yeah, really, really good performance, actually. We know exactly what he can do. We know what his sort of role is in the team, but it's been very difficult. It's been a whole season of disruption. He's had COVID, he's had injuries. He's never quite been able to consistently be in the team and show what he can do. But I think it sort of helps that Thiago sort of has got used to his position in the team. I think he's got a couple of centre-backs alongside him that aren't maybe the most experienced, but sometimes that can bring the best out of players. I think you can, have that leadership. It's obviously a little bit more on Trent's shoulders to help that defence. And I think we've seen sort of the best of him going both ways there over the last couple of games. He's sort of done, a really good job defensively. He's looked solid when he's needed to be. I thought, even in previous games where Liverpool have conceded, you think of, up against Harvey Barnes, I thought for the majority of the game against Leicester, he did pretty well in that regard. But we all know that his big strength is going forward. And obviously we've seen the assist for Curtis Jones tonight. We've seen plenty of passes and moments where he's got himself into those positions. And, we even when he was in poor form earlier this season, there was always mitigating factors. You always felt that he'd get back to those levels at some point. And yeah, it's no coincidence, is it, that when he's starting to play at his best, Liverpool create a few more chances. And to be honest, the issue for Liverpool in recent weeks hasn't necessarily been that they haven't created chances. It's been more a case that they just haven't taken them. And I suppose if Trent keeps continuing to produce those opportunities, eventually the tide will turn and Liverpool will score them. So yeah, great to see him back. We know how good he is. He's not quite at his absolute peak yet, but I don't think that's really possible, without the best players possible around him. But yeah, if Trent's in this sort of form between now and the end of this season, I think you'd probably back Liverpool to get into that top four, which was looking a little bit shaky, wasn't it, over the last couple of weeks? But things can change very quickly. There's been a lot of good results that have gone Liverpool's way this weekend. They absolutely had to win tonight and step up, and Trent was a huge part in doing that.
Yeah, you talked a moment ago about in recent weeks the big problem for Liverpool has not been taking those chances, being ruthless in the final third, and a lot of the attention leading up to this game, including on our podcast and YouTube video channel, is centered on Roberto Firmino. And I was going to ask when that ball went in the back of the net tonight. One of the questions was how much a bigger boost will that be for the Brazilian to get back on the score sheet? But it's when I was just doing I switched off for kind of 10 minutes from the game. I was doing prep for this podcast. I actually see it's been given as an own goal. It's incredible, that, isn't it? I know it took a deflection, but surely that's Firmino's goal.
I mean, to be honest, that's what I thought to begin with. But you see the replay, and it was going 3 or 4 yards wide. He dragged it a long way, unfortunately. But I think you've got to take the positives. I think the feet leading up to it was brilliant. That's what Roberto Firmino is at his best, isn't it? It's the creation of the space inside a tight penalty area to just have the confidence to be able to take 3 or 4 touches when he's under pressure, get that shot away. And he deserved that look. I think it was a fortunate deflection, but Liverpool had enough chances in that match for that to be a deserved goal for Roberto Firmino, but for the team as well. I think he probably should have had 1 or 2 in the first half. I don't think we should sort of brush over that. We know his finishing hasn't been the best. He's not looked particularly confident, but I think even though it's going to be going down as an own goal, I think he can still take a little bit of confidence from that, because it comes from his shot. It comes from a bit of footwork inside the penalty area, like I say, for that to be created. And if he hadn't have put himself in that position again, even having missed a couple of those chances earlier in the first half, then Liverpool wouldn't have got it. So yeah, it was an important goal. I think it's not going to go down as his goal, unfortunately, but I think probably we see a better version of Roberto Firmino going forward now because of that. I think you could see that the celebration, the way that he wheeled away, I think it meant a great deal to him, especially having missed particularly that one where he was one-on-one early in the game. You did wonder, was the game going the same way as a few previous games have gone? Was it going to be a case of Sheffield United going away on the counter and scoring a goal and probably winning without deserving to? But thankfully that wasn't the case, and Firmino can breathe a little bit easier, I think, even though it wasn't actually his goal.
Yeah, very much part of the strikers union. I still think that should go. He did too much work, and it was his shot. It should have been his goal. But we live in the day and age of the dubious goals panel, so it will go down as a Kean Bryan own goal. So a boost for Firmino, certainly for his confidence, if not for his goal tally, but a boost for the defence as well, Matt. I think that's the first Premier League clean sheet Liverpool have kept in 8 games since the 0-0 draw with Manchester United in the middle of January. How do you think that makeshift back four fared tonight with Adrian in goal, with Alisson obviously missing the game through compassionate leave following the tragic death of his father, and obviously with the first choice centre-backs out as well as Henderson and Fabinho?
Let's start with the goalkeeper, who I thought was brilliant. I think obviously coming in for a player like Alisson is not easy, especially when you know that realistically he's now Liverpool's third choice with Ian Kelleher injured. I think he's going to be back in the next week or so, Kelleher. But I think if Alisson is going to be out for the next couple of games, on the evidence of tonight, you'd probably go with Adrian again. I think he did really well in a couple of moments. There was one right near the end where he preserves that clean sheet, comes out quickly, does everything that you need him to do. And he didn't have to do anything spectacular. There was, a few chances that he saved and just sort of did the basics. But that's all you want from, a backup goalkeeper. You want him to be able to save the shots that he should save. You want him to be able to play out from the back, which I think Adrian can do when he's fully concentrated and fully at it. So I think that was an important performance from him. I think it's one of those that, if he's in goal on Thursday night, which we have to assume that I think he will be now, you're not quite as worried as what you might have been, in previous games and previous performances. He's probably given his defence and Liverpool fans something to worry about. But on the evidence of tonight, I think he looked really, really solid. And that was obviously helped by the two players in front of him, who I thought, again, pretty much did the basics, did what they needed to do. There was a couple of moments where Sheffield United got in, but it's the Premier League. You expect one or two times in a game, there'll be a half chance at least, even for a team that doesn't really score a huge amount of goals. I think the big test will be Chelsea. I think Kabak and Phillips did okay tonight, as I say, but they were coming up against a team which scores on average about 0.6 goals per game. So it was never going to be the big test. I think the big test will come on Thursday night. And if it is those two at centre-back, I'd still be slightly concerned. I think that there was enough signs, I think, from a very limited Sheffield United attack that they could have got in. If they had better quality, I think they would have had one or two chances, and probably you'd fancy them to score one or two of those. But yeah, for tonight, let's focus on the positives. They've done everything right. They've not made any mistakes, which is a step up on previous weeks. And Liverpool just have to go with them. It's not like there's many other options. We know Ben Davies was injured again, picked up a little knock in the build-up to this one. He's an option, but other than that, there really isn't anything else to go with. So, yeah, Liverpool and Jurgen Klopp have to take the positives. The positive is it was a clean sheet. Chelsea's a much bigger test, and I think that'll give us a better indication of where Liverpool are at defensively. But for tonight, let's just leave it at clean sheet, no mistakes. I think everyone's happy.
Yeah, definitely. A positive performance, positive results. And as you mentioned earlier, a positive weekend. I think every team above Liverpool in the table bar, I think it's right to call them the champions elect, even at this early stage. Manchester City dropped points. And yeah, it was a big game, Chelsea, anyway, wasn't it? But this weekend is just up the ante even more, isn't it? If Liverpool can go there, they go to Anfield, I should say, and beat Chelsea, they move above them in the table, potentially move above West Ham as well into the top four. It does feel big, this one, doesn't it, Matt?
It does. I think the way the results have gone this week, I think it's probably a must not lose more than a must win on Thursday. I think a point wouldn't be the worst result in the world, but if Liverpool can build on this, they can go again, pick up a 3 points there. I think they're going to have to be more clinical. They're going to have to take their chances when they come against Chelsea, because there's not going to be as many as what we saw tonight. But it's small steps, it's building blocks. Liverpool have been in really, really poor form, so tonight was just about getting that win and taking that into the next game. We've seen as well over previous matches against the better sides. You think of Tottenham and one or two teams like that. Liverpool have produced their better performances in those matches. So yeah, look, at Anfield, you fancy Liverpool, even with the recent record there. They've lost however many it is on the bounce now. They've got to bounce back and come back with that. It is a huge game in terms of the top four, but I think the way that the results have gone this weekend, it takes the pressure off a little bit for Liverpool. If Chelsea had won today, Liverpool hadn't have won, then suddenly you're looking at that one and thinking they absolutely have to win it. I think now it's a little bit more of a case that they can go into it, try and be controlling, try and play as they normally do, take the chances and be clinical when they come. And yeah, 3 points would almost be a bonus, I think, for Liverpool against Chelsea. But with 12 games left, it's one of those. It's back in their hands, I think, now. As long as they go into that Chelsea game and do what they need to do and put in a performance which builds on this one, rather than losing that momentum and having to start again against Fulham next weekend. You just want them to take that next step forward. And I think I've seen enough from them tonight to suggest that you can go into that with a bit of positivity, which certainly at this stage of the season was much needed.
Most definitely. Thanks, Matt, and thank you very much for joining us on the debrief. Do stick around for Jurgen Klopp's and Chris Wilder's press conferences in full. They'll be coming up pretty soon. And then join us again tomorrow for the Monday Blood Red podcast. Bye for now.
This is the Blood Red podcast from the